Okay, welcome to a short lecture on informative speech. We will go into more detail about creating an informative speech outline as well as getting ready to present, but this is just to get you started and just to understand what is an informative speech. And I'd also like you to be able to select a topic for your informative speech. You can always change it. It's just a way to get started on just deciding on what you want to talk about. That's my goal for you today. Topics for an informative can be pretty much anything you want. It's just information. You're just sharing something about people, events, issues, places, objects and phenomena, a concept, or even a process. So I tell people the world is your oyster, if I can say that correctly. What I want you to do with your informative speech is what's something that is important, interesting, or exciting to you. And I'd like you to share that with the class, and we'll find that probably just as interesting as well. We have learned a lot of things over the years of teaching informative speeches, so you really have a nice array of choices for you to choose from. Lots of ways to deliver an informative speech. One thing is that we definitely want to be descriptive. For example, if you're talking about a great vacation you had in Hawaii, we're not in Hawaii. So the more descriptive you can be, the more we are with you in that place or in that time, that period in history, or at that event. And so try to use really descriptive words and tell a story as you're telling the speech. It really does keep the audience engaged. You can also do a demonstration. We've had many students do demonstrations and they do really well. It's important with the demonstration that you have some type of visual aid. It's hard to understand the start to finish process and the end product if we don't have that. Think of a cooking show. They're showing you how to make a cake, and then magically they open the oven and the cake appears. But it really is a great way to show in a short amount of time how something is done with an end result. If you're going to talk about a concept or a process that we may not be familiar with, it's very important that you define your terms. If we don't understand what you're talking about, if you have a lot of acronyms and you don't explain those acronyms, the audience gets lost. It's very hard to pay attention. So make sure that if you're sharing something with us that we don't know much about, that you make sure that you define your terms. And explanations are good as well, especially when we're looking at conceptual types of information. Make sure you go into detail and that you kind of take us on your journey. Don't assume that we understand. And even if we do or we are familiar with the topic, there's always something more to learn. So keep in mind that you have to explain as you go so that the audience stays with you. And again, we'll go into more detail with this as we get closer to our speeches. There are different types of speeches, and the informative speech really is just that. We're going to inform. And what happens a lot if students aren't careful is that they turn their informative speech into a persuasive. And a persuasive speech we have to be careful of. That's going to come on later during the semester. But we really are only trying to inform people. We are trying to withhold our bias, our judgment, or our opinion about something as much as we are just trying to give information. So to help you kind of stay focused on the informative speech, the question you want to answer is, what is it about my topic that I want my audience to understand? What do I want them to know? With a persuasive, not only do you want them to understand something, you also want them to agree with you on your point of view of that topic, or you want them to take action. You want them to do something. So here's a quick example how you can take one topic and actually have two very different speeches. With the informative speech, the topic I choose will be children and hunger, for example. My general purpose of this speech is to inform, and my specific purpose is that I want to provide information to the audience on local programs that help feed children. So I just want to give them some information about programs. That's the extent of my speech. I can take that same topic with the persuasive and change it just a bit to get them to do an action. So my topic is children and hunger. My general purpose this time is to persuade. And my specific purpose is that I want the audience members to donate to their local food banks. So one is just information. They can do with the information what they want. But my second speech, my persuasive, I actually want them to agree or commit to donating to local food banks. Same topic, different purpose. So some tips on an informative speech. Remember, this speech is only 5 to 7 minutes long, and the maximum will be 10 minutes. There are a lot of people in the class. Having everyone give an informative speech is going to actually take probably 2 to 3 weeks to accomplish. And when the audience has in its mind that the speech will only be 5 to 7 minutes long, when it extends beyond that time, then the audience starts to lose interest, because we have kind of gone against the commitment that we made that it would only be a short speech. So I probably will give you a signal if your speech extends past 10 minutes that you need to come to a conclusion. Most people will definitely meet the 5 to 7 minute mark, and they can actually give a lot of information in that short amount of time. So one way to do it is to make it easy. So if you have a subject, what are 3 critical points of that subject that you want the audience to understand? We can get very passionate about a topic or an interest that we have in our life, but we just don't have time to go into a lot of detail about it. So you need to choose what are the top 3 things about that subject that you would like the audience to know. Relate known ideas to new ones. And again, so what does the audience know, and can you use their information to help them understand a new concept or whatever else is in your speech that it might be new to them. So again, we'll go into more detail about that, but that helps the audience make sense of your speech a little bit more when it relates to something that they already know. As I said earlier, make sure you define your terms and your acronyms. Very hard to follow a speech if we don't understand the words that are being used. With an informative speech, using stories, statistics, asking your audience questions, or for them to share their experience or their insight, it's a great way to keep the audience engaged. Stories, especially personal stories, are always a hit with the audience. They appreciate people and their willingness to share their life experience with them, and it definitely keeps their attention. Use a visual aid. For the informative speech, it's not required, but I would highly encourage you to use something. Most adult learners are most adult learners learn through their visual, and so having a visual aid there helps us follow along as well. So for your assignment this week, we want to start off with you choosing a topic. So we're going to do a little brainstorming, and then we're going to kind of cluster those ideas and look at our list, and then we'll come down with hopefully one idea with 3 main points. Brainstorming is pretty easy. It's just a matter of just coming up with a lot of ideas and not being critical of those ideas, and just kind of taking a look at what you could talk about. So for example, I'm going to brainstorm on what do I want to talk about for an informative speech, and I might come up with, I want to talk about inexpensive travel spots. I want to talk about my favorite charities. I could talk about the gluten-free diet. And I could also do a demonstration speech on how to fix a flat tire. I could do any of those if I chose. Once you have your list, go ahead and pick 1 or 2, and let's go ahead and dissect that down. So I'm going to choose my favorite charities. And from there, well, what are my favorite charities? Well, I like the Idaho Food Bank. I like the Women and Children's Alliance. And I like St. Jude's Hospital for Children. So if I wanted to talk about all 3 of those organizations, I would not have enough time. There's not enough time in 5 to 7 minutes to go over in detail each one of these organizations. So from there, I'm going to pick one of those charities to talk about for my informative speech. So I choose the Idaho Food Bank. So again, I go back to my brainstorming model. And what is it about the Idaho Food Bank? What are 3 things about that organization that I want the audience to know about? I think it's important that they know the history and the purpose of the food bank. I'm going to give some statistics on hunger in Idaho and how the food bank assists those people with that need. and I'm also going to talk about the different food raising events that the Idaho Food Bank sponsors throughout the state throughout the year. That I can probably cover in 5 to 7 minutes. I will have opportunity in the rest of my college life to talk about the Women's and Children's Alliance, St. Jude's Hospital, or even some of my other ideas that I wanted to give a speech on. But for this speech, I'm going to narrow it down to one topic with 3 critical points. You can do the balloons like I showed you in the last slide to kind of decide on what are those points that you want to talk about, or you can make some type of a chart like I have here. Here you have the main topic, and then again ask yourself, what are some subjects or other points I can bring up about this main topic? And those go into the second type of square that you see there. Then from there, you again dissect it down to, are there 3 main points about that subject that I could talk about? If not, you don't have enough material and you might want to combine it with another subject, or you might want to pick another subject altogether. So if my main topic is too large, I'm going to cut it down into different categories and different subjects, and from there, can I find 3 points to talk about? If so, for this speech, it might be a good idea just to focus on one subject of my main topic. And when opportunity arises, I can talk about other subjects that support that main topic as well. So for your assignment this week, what I want you to do is I want you just to do a little brainstorming activity and write down all of the topics that you would like to talk about for your 5 to 7 minute information speech. Select one topic, and then you start to cluster. What is it about that one topic that you could talk about? And then what I want you to do is submit your topic and the 3 supporting points to a journal. And I will provide an example for you in the journal. I also want to know why you're interested in presenting the topic for the class. This is important because your interest will probably be your introductory statement into the informative speech and possibly your thesis. So I can help you build that introduction and thesis if I know why you have an interest in the topic to begin with. And so that's very important for our next section of this assignment. Thank you.